Welcome to part 2 of GSB automation and building gold day trading systems. This video will make very little sense until you've looked at part 1 of the previous video. Gold is a market that was surprisingly easy to build systems on with GSB, and also very good correlation or lack of correlation between them, but it happens to be an extremely volatile market at the moment with decent moves that are very easy to catch in 2020. Long term, I don't expect it to stay this good. No market is in the ideal conditions all the time, but it's fantastic when the market is in ideal trading conditions and you've got good systems to trade it. I'm trading two similar accounts, so this is about half my profits trading gold in November 2020 month to date. Please take a moment to read the disclaimer. You can pause it if you need to as well. You should subscribe to these threads. The first one's on GSB automation and gives you updates and new features and what's going on and how people are using it. The second thread is a very interesting one that talks about how people are using GSB, things that people have learnt, things to try. The third link is where you get the installer file for GSB automation. And the fourth one, GSB comes with about 46 indicators in the trial version. But if you want more, and some of these are beta indicators, and they may or may not make it into the final trial version, but there's some gems in there. And to enable those, you need to follow the instructions in that URL. When GSB is installed, it'll put the gold data file, which is on Central USA time, not on exchange time, and it's also going to put these macros in there. And note the new one, gold indicators build setting number 2, 117, that gives you 117 indicators. The first thing we're going to do is open a GSB manager, and you can see here that crude oil settings are open. We're going to go File, Load Optimize Settings, and load gc-xx file, which will be installed by GSB automation. You can see there are 47 indicators installed, which is what we did in the last test. However, we've now got another macro, and to install that we'll go right click M1, left click M1, click on this one here that says gold indicator build settings number 2, 117 indicators. Now you can see how that 47 indicators, when I hit the play button on the macros, changes to 118. So that's actually 117 indicators and one secondary filter. So this has all the settings that we need pre-programmed for GSB automation. And I'm just going to do File, Save, Optimize Settings as. We then open GSB automation, and the first thing we do is choose the GSB opt settings file that we just saved in GSB. Click Open. We now need to decide what we want to do with automation. So I'm going to go through 3 session times, 2 o'clock, 2:30 and 3 o'clock. And I'm going to let automation set the entry mode, even though there's only one entry mode in automation. It just means it's set from the automation side, not the GSB side. And I'm going to do a 1-pass green indicator build to select the best indicators, and then I'm going to build the systems using the best indicators there. If I wanted to add and do a 2-pass, so we select the best indicators, then out of those ones select the best again, I would have green build. Now normally we do 50,000 systems, but if I wanted to do a fast test, which will be not as good in its results, but you'd go as low as 10,000 systems, I would put a 10,000 there, and that will override the 50,000 that is in GSB here. So in theory, we can run, for example, less indicator tests on indicator choice than we do on systems. I don't do that. I'm keeping them the same, but this does give the option to do both. There's an auto exit here, and that can be set to blank, true or false, and that will determine whether the manager will exit when GSB is finished or whether it stays open. There's also a exit here, which you can change while automation is running if you want managers to stay open or closed, but the previous ones I showed you take precedence over this one here. So we need to have something in the header, so we'll just call this test 1 hash. The macros, we have them already loaded. Green minimum 4, so that means it'll choose the green indicators and use at least 4 if there aren't 4 green ones. These are pre-programmed in automation and you don't really need to set them up. Secondary filters, if you want to try different secondary filters, you can select whatever ones you want here and stick to true. And the 6:30 session uses completely different secondary filters to what the 2 AM session roughly uses. But in this example here, I'm going to use close less previous close BPV, which is the most common secondary filter that's used in GSB. The session times, in this example, I'm just going to use 2 o'clock, 2:30 and 3 o'clock. So you can see that they are set to true and all the others are set to false. There's one change in this version of automation in the fact that your indicators can now be sorted alphabetically, so that's going from A to Z, or they can be sorted numerically, which is in effect the number that they were added in GSB. You can also change the order that they appear, and this is what I often do, is put the most commonly used secondary filters up the top. We can also import a list of secondary filters that we want to use by clicking the Import CSV button. And I at times have used this to import from the GSB automation macro file when it gives you a list of what indicators were used. The entry modes, I'm only going to use the cross entry mode, and when it said move entry mode, it will force the settings in GSB to use cross. At the moment I don't want to use any of these because I think cross is the best one for gold. If I hit start and immediately stop, you'll see all the commands that are going to be executing to GSB. So it starts by the session time at 2 o'clock, is doing a 2-pass green, green, and there's no build, which means I've made a mistake. I'm going to go back to here, command sequence, green, green, build, and I'm also going to remove this because I want to do 50,000 systems. So now if I hit stop, start, and then stop, you'll see it's doing a session time 2 o'clock, changing the entry mode to cross, doing a 1-pass green, then building using the gold settings, and it's repeating that on 2:30 and then 3 o'clock. As I want 4 copies of this because the results vary a lot from one copy to another, and that gives me more of a consistent average feel of what something does, I've got repeat test set to 4. If I just did repeat test set to 1, you'll see it's only done those 3 session times. Now if you've got a lot of workers, like 50 or 100 or much more, you can run multiple copies, which will run, in this case, 4 copies of the managers all at once. Because it takes several minutes to do the statistics, your workers would be sitting idle, while as if we have 4 managers running and we're actually delaying the start of each manager, say by 90 seconds, that utilises our CPU more. But that's only going to affect users who have got numerous GSB servers, and there's quite a few people who have done that. So I'll run this, and you'll see GSB going through all of those session times and running 4 copies of them. If you want an email when GSB automation's finished, you can put your details in here and it will email you. It does give you an estimation of how long it will take up the top here, and that won't be accurate till it's at least done 1 or 2 builds. And here it's opened the first manager. You can see a .3 on the end there. That .3 is what has been appended in GSB automation. You can see how we're on index 3, and so when it's finished that and goes to the next one, it'll be putting in .4, and that allows us to identify what manager is being used. 2.5 hours later we're done with about 400 workers. So I think there's some real gems in the indicators from 40 to 110, but there's also some lemons, and if we can get a reduced indicator set of less than 110 indicators, that'll probably speed this whole process up, and I'll try and work on something like that in the future. We now have the CSV output in this folder here, and if you double click that, assuming you've got Excel loaded, then Excel will open looking something like this. Then you need to open the Visual Basic Excel spreadsheet that comes when you purchase GSB Automation. Select the input file we've just loaded and then hit Process. This is what we see in Excel, and when we go to the Summary tab, we see all the results compiled and added together. Now the things we want to note here is that the average in favourite B, that's the really good systems, is 73.58. That's out of the 300. Our BCD results are 5.47, and we can't compare with our previous benchmark from the other video because this is using fitness of net profit over drawdown, whilst we use net profit times average trade in video 1. You can also see the indicators that we used, and we can see them also in popularity. Now what's very significant is only 52 out of the 117 indicators were ever used. Now this, among other things, means we're wasting a lot of CPU time trying indicators that never even appeared in the top 300 systems. Now I've put the 52 indicators into a CSV file using Notepad. To do this manually is just absolutely painful, particularly before we even had the alphabetical sort. So what I'm going to do is do import CSV, which is a new feature. I'm going to put the path of just where I happen to put the file, indicator list there, open, OK, and you can see there we now got 52 indicators. So I'm going to import this list, import, and we've now got the 52 indicators plus a secondary filter in GSB. I'm going to do File, Save As, call it test number 3. Then in automation, I've actually just started running this a little while ago. You've got to go to here and select test number 3. Let's get back to this when it's done. Now here's the results. Only 25 of the 52 indicators were used in the top 300 systems. And you can compare now the results between the first test using 117 indicators and the second test using the 52. We can see that the BCD results have gone from 5.47 to 6.55, and the average amount of systems in favourites B has gone from 75 to 105. So quite a substantial improvement in performance. You could repeat this entire process again and feed the reduced indicator set back into GSB, but of course you will get less systems. I did, however, find another tweak that I managed to get the results up to 185 systems in favourite B and 8.18 BCD results. And that's what members who contributed to the Gold project will eventually get, that little tip of how that was done as well. The less indicators you have, the less variation you'll be getting in each individual system, but I still don't think that's an issue even at this stage. There is one, however, issue that needs to be fixed, that this whole process of exporting indicators into a list and then putting it back into GSB, it's not automated. Again, it's human input, and I'm hoping before long automation will automatically do that again, so this entire new method of doing things can be 100% automated. I've now completed this ability to import the indicators used and redo systems using the reduced indicator set. What I've found is this reduces indicators less than what green, for example, does. However, there's a lot of work involved to see what combination of using green with reducing the amount of indicators, and I've come to the conclusion that fewer indicators gives you stronger systems, but you also reduce the diversity in the systems. Now, the exact amount of indicators, I'm not exactly sure, but it also depends on how many systems you're going to want as well. So this will all take a fair bit of time and research over the next few months to figure out the best combination. In this example here, I started with about 110 indicators and did no green filter of choosing the indicators that were green using the green macro. And after 4 complete loops, I got an average of 55 indicators. So the reduction of indicators is very mild compared to green. And what I should have done is do a green reduce indicator set and then started looping the indicators. So the indicator set can be reduced by using a green or green-orange macro, or you can even use a green but force, for example 8, which means you're going to get the top 8 indicators even if they're green or orange. So you could do a 1 pass with a force 8, and that will give you 8 indicators, which would be faster than doing a 2-pass green test, but it probably wouldn't be as good. I want to make a comment about a new feature that's in the Excel spreadsheet. You can see here that the amount of indicators is averaging 10 and 11.5 and 11.25 per system, but the total amount of indicators used was 25. Now you can look in the Excel spreadsheet for exactly what's used and how often, but I haven't even thought through the implications of this and if we can do some further refining. There are some basic issues of, if an indicator isn't used often, is it still really useful for diversification or giving good results or not? And all of this probably needs to be investigated and tested, for example. Like, what would these results be if we removed all the indicators, they were only used once or twice? What would the correlation of the systems produced be like if you remove those that aren't used often in the systems? A few more final comments. I'd mentioned that the indicators from 44 or so on to 110, there were some gems, but also I felt there's some lemons. Well, everything in orange is actually the indicators that are newer, and they're not in the trial version of GSB. I guess they're considered experimental and they'll eventually be added to all platforms when we confirm they work. But everything orange there is the newer indicators, and some are very new that have just come out in the last week or two. And the thing that I find interesting is many of the newer indicators end up being the final indicators used in the favourites B after a 1 or 2 pass build. Another comment is this was all using the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock session time. When we use a 6:30 session time, that's Central USA time, not exchange time, we get completely different secondary filters needed, and I'm expecting a significantly different set of indicators that will be used as well. I'll also be publishing the indicator list used on the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock session, which would save you doing a huge amount of this work because you can just import the CSV list. But the 6:30 information is going only to those who contributed to the Gold project by helping donate their CPU power. Not everything is included in this video, and automation's a project that's getting a lot of development work currently, so more and more will be added into the documentation, which is slightly lagging. But please keep in touch and look for video 3, which will be how we get a system out of favourites B, which is actually really easy and really fast, but that'll be in part 3 of the video. So thanks for watching and your support. Look out for more videos here, and please remember to like the video. That way that promotes GSB, as there's no real marketing for GSB apart from the client base who love the product.